Greetings, dear friends, and welcome once more. We are truly grateful for your presence with us today. A delightful new tale awaits your eager ears. Shall we embark on this journey together? Allow me to introduce myself. I am Alex. Through the trials of experience, I have come to understand that the unraveling of a relationship is seldom a sudden event. Many are inclined to think that a singular moment exists, one that can break apart the very fabric of our lives. Yet such is not the nature of reality. Relationships do not burst forth in chaos. Rather, they gradually fade away. They unravel gently, fragment by fragment, until one fateful day you glance around and discover you are sharing your life with a stranger. It begins with a hush, followed by the widening gap, then the disregard, and ultimately the disconnection. That cycle, it exists, and I have experienced it deeply. I understand that may seem burdensome, and trust me, it truly is. It was in that moment, as my wife welcomed her lover into our shared home, that I understood we had reached the depths of despair. In that fleeting instant, I realized with unwavering certainty that she must depart. Yet, there was a time when circumstances were quite different. Indeed, there was a moment when existence alongside her seemed vibrant, thrilling, and undeniably exquisite. Let us journey back to that enchanting beginning, to a time when everything felt beautifully clear. For if I am to share the tale of how everything unraveled, you truly deserve to hear the story of its beautiful beginnings. It was many years ago that I first encountered Emily, the enchanting woman who would eventually become my beloved wife, as I settled into a newly constructed apartment complex. Having recently moved to this charming locale, I must admit, I found myself in the unfamiliar company of solitude. At that time, my existence was rather uncomplicated, revolving around the comforts of home and the demands of work, with only the rare visits from a handful of friends who resided in a distant part of town. I found it rather inconsequential. I had grown accustomed to cherishing my solitude and dedicating myself to my endeavors. Yet, as time passed, the daily rhythm of departing for work and returning home began to take on an air of monotony, lacking the spark of excitement. Thus, I have chosen to embrace a new direction. One of the initial thoughts that graced my mind was the idea of indulging in some invigorating exercise. Each morning at the break of dawn, I have taken to jogging at 5 a.m., believing it to be a delightful escape from my everyday routine and an enchanting opportunity to explore the charming nuances of my neighborhood. I would venture out at dawn, before the city fully stirred from its slumber, returning by the gentle hour of 6 a.m. The streets lay in serene silence, offering me a moment to gather my thoughts, as I beheld the neighborhood through a fresh lens. It enveloped me in tranquility, yet stirred a gentle surge of vitality for the day that lay before me. Each morning as I jogged, I would catch a glimpse of a particular woman who graced my path daily. As I completed my run, she gracefully glided by, her presence impossible to overlook. She possessed a beauty that seemed to flow effortlessly, enchanting all who beheld her. Words escape me, yet I find myself eagerly anticipating those enchanting early morning encounters. After gliding past her on several occasions, I ultimately found myself pausing one day. Without much contemplation, I found myself approaching her and inquiring, "Do you reside here?" She smiled, her eyes sparkling with a hint of surprise, and replied, "Yes, I do." Our conversation began softly and truthfully. It felt as though we had shared a connection far beyond those fleeting moments. For reasons unknown, an undeniable connection sparked between us in that very moment. It was then that I discovered her name, Emily. From that day forward, our encounters became more frequent, weaving a delicate tapestry of shared moments. I altered my jogging schedule to align with yours, and thus, our beautiful friendship blossomed. Initially, it was quite uncomplicated. Emily and I would glide through our jogs, occasionally engaging in soft conversation, at other times simply relishing the tranquil silence that enveloped us. Yet, as time passed, my thoughts of her deepened, and gradually, our friendship blossomed into something far more enchanting. As the days unfolded, our bond deepened, and in due course, we transitioned from the realm of friendship to the enchanting world of romance. As fate would have it, Our proximity allowed me to bask in Emily's presence nearly every day. After a long day at work, I would return home, and we would spend time together, transforming that simple routine into a cherished anticipation. And before I realized it, it had transcended mere dating. As our conversations turned to the future, it wasn't long before we found ourselves embracing the beautiful decision to unite in marriage. Looking back, I now understand that every moment from that time seemed utterly exquisite. We were blissful, entwined in love, and everything flowed effortlessly. In that moment, life unfolded in a manner that felt perfectly aligned with my desires. Once Emily and I exchanged our vows, I invited her to sit with me one serene evening, believing it was the perfect moment to share something of great significance. I confided in her about my child from a past relationship. I was not concealing it from a place of shame or guilt. I believed it was a matter that could wait, as I have always embraced my responsibilities wholeheartedly. I took care of all the expenses. I found myself visiting frequently. I continued to stand by the child's mother, despite the fact that our paths had diverged. In my heart, I believed I had acted with the utmost grace. Yet, Emily's response took me completely by surprise. As soon as the words escaped my lips, it felt as though a switch had been elegantly flipped. She rose gracefully, her eyes shimmering with surprise, and succumbed to her emotions. She charged me with betrayal, claiming I had deceived her into becoming my bride. She passionately exclaimed that she could never have envisioned herself with a man who already had a child. I endeavored to soothe her troubled spirit, yet she remained unyielding to my words. That night transformed everything. It forged a chasm between us, and despite my earnest attempts to mend it with Aridavidan tenderness, that chasm remained ever open. From that moment forward, every disagreement we encountered, even those seemingly unrelated to my son, inevitably found their way back to him. Should I neglect to remove the trash, she might gently chide, "Perhaps your thoughts are consumed by another family." If I were to pay him a visit, she would behave as though I were selecting another over her. There came a time when I could foresee the instant she would mention it. Her voice would transform, as if she were unveiling her most cherished treasure. Yet we remained united in marriage for 7 more years. It seems an eternity spent gracefully circling a wound that remains unhealed. Throughout those 7 years, Emily and I were blessed with no child of our own. I chose not to pursue the matter, as she never mentioned it herself. She would effortlessly dismiss it whenever the subject arose. "We are well," she would declare. "Let us not burden ourselves with worry." I chose to let it be. I believed that if she felt no concern, then I too should embrace a sense of calm. At that moment, I remained unaware that Emily had quietly resolved our fate, a choice that did not encompass children, at least not of my own. In the wake of my son's mother finding love anew, a transformation unfolded in our lives. This new Jamishas made it abundantly clear that he prefers not to have my David in his presence. It seems the man would only cast a glance or utter a word when his voice rose in anger. During our visits, my David began to share his feelings with me, expressing that he no longer felt a sense of welcome. I believed it was merely the growing pains of adapting to a new stepfather, yet the situation only deepened in its complexity. With every encounter, I noticed my David retreating further into himself. Each moment we shared, he would gently inquire if he might take up residence with me. Initially, I believed he simply longed for my presence. Yet, on a fateful day, he gazed deeply into my eyes and softly asked, "Dad, may I come and live with you?" In his gaze, I discerned that this longing transcended the mere desire for additional moments. In that moment, I realized it was time for me to take action. I approached his mother, gently requesting her permission to allow him to remain with me for a time, just until circumstances settled down. Yet she declined, her gaze unwavering. She remarked that I was being overly dramatic, insisting that the boy was perfectly well, and advised me to tend to my own affairs. I endeavored to engage her in conversation, sharing the words my David had confided in me, yet she dismissed it swiftly. In that moment, I realized that my options had slipped away like whispers in the night. I attended court to seek custody. Allow me to share, it was truly a most distressing experience. The endless dance of lawyers, the intricate ballet of paperwork, meetings that stretched on, and the relentless back and forth that seemed to linger indefinitely. She resisted fiercely, not out of a true desire to keep the child by her side, but rather from a deep-seated fear of relinquishing her grasp on control. She wove tales, distorted the truth, and endeavored to cast me as the one unsteady. Though it stretched endlessly over the months, I remained steadfast, for I understood the depth of my purpose. My intentions were not born from malice. I undertook this endeavor to bestow upon my David the gift of tranquility. In the end, the court graciously decided in my favor. They perceived the circumstances with clarity and bestowed upon me the gift of full custody. The memory of that day when I welcomed him into my home lingers in my heart forever. He smiled with greater frequency, laughed with a lighter heart, and found his slumber more restful. And while I felt a sense of relief, I was unaware that welcoming my David into our home would ignite a spark in the fragile state of my marriage. My beloved wife, whom I had wished would comprehend and welcome him, did not respond favorably at all. As I returned home with my son, a profound sense of conviction filled my heart, affirming that welcoming him into my life was the most exquisite choice I could have made. I truly believed that Emily, my beloved wife, would comprehend my feelings. I envisioned that she would embrace him, perhaps even come to cherish him as time unfolded. That is precisely what I longed for. I acknowledge my mistake. As I stepped through the threshold, my David by my side, I noticed a profound shift in Emily's demeanor. She offered no greeting. Then the questions began to dance through the air. Why did I not share with her that I was inviting him to join our lives? How could I possibly arrive at such a decision without first confiding in her? Her inquiry was not born of a desire for comprehension. She was advancing with fervor. Her voice rose in intensity, tinged with a fervent passion. And before I realized it, we found ourselves in a heated exchange. I endeavored to convey my thoughts, truly I did. I gently reminded her of the moment I shared the news of my David after our vows, assuring her that I have always embraced my responsibilities with love and care. I confided in her about the precariousness of his living situation, how he yearned to be by my side, and how I found myself with no alternative. I implored her to understand that my intentions were never to cause her pain. Yet, she was not inclined to listen. Amidst the cacophony of voices, she let something slip from her grasp. She cried out, "You brought that boy here without a thought for me. For 7 long years, I have taken every measure to ensure that I would not bring a child into this world, for I yearned for a different life altogether." Initially, I believed I had misheard her. I was utterly captivated. I gently requested her to repeat it. What could she have meant by that? She cast a delicate glance upward, her eyes swirling with a hint of exasperation. "It matters not," she murmured, gliding past me as if our entire exchange were but a fleeting distraction, unworthy of her attention. Yet it held significance. It held a significance beyond anything she had ever expressed to me. For 7 years, I held onto the hope that it would unfold gracefully in its own time. I never envisioned that she had been diligently thwarting it. I felt utterly taken by surprise. In due course, I inquired of her why she had never confided in me about it, why she felt no compulsion to share her true sentiments regarding the prospect of having children. Her sole reply was that I had taken it upon myself to make all the decisions concerning my son. In that fleeting moment, I came to the poignant realization that I was bound to a partner who not only wished to remain childless, but also harbored a quiet resentment towards me for embracing motherhood. Now that my David was in our home, innocent and undeserving of blame, she perceived him as a threat rather than embracing him as family. As the months pass, our marriage begins to resemble 2 distant souls cohabiting under the same roof. Conversations dwindled to simple inquiries like, "Have you settled the light bill, or what shall we have for dinner?" At times, I would playfully tease my wife, inquiring if she wished to share a moment together, yet she would often be too weary or have prior commitments to attend to. And even when she graced her home, her essence seemed to linger elsewhere. In time, she discovered enchanting paths to freedom. Yoga retreats, indulgent spa weekends shared with her closest friends, and delightful girls' nights that effortlessly transformed into enchanting Saturdays. Initially, I endeavored to offer my unwavering support. I whispered to myself that perhaps she simply required some distance, that she was finding her way in a life she had not anticipated. Yet, as she gradually slipped from my grasp, I sensed an enchanting veil of invisibility enveloping me. She found herself enchanted by her phone, a soft smile gracing her lips as she engaged in whispered late-night conversations in the kitchen, or slipping outside to savor the moment when a particular message arrived. I am no fool. I was acutely aware of the vision before me. To lose affection is one sorrow, yet to feel as though one has been replaced is a deeper ache. It was evident that another soul had captured her heart, someone who could evoke laughter and stir emotions within her that I had yet to touch. Yet I persevered in my efforts. I set aside my pride and approached her, not with the intent to argue, but to mend what was broken between us. I expressed my sincerest apologies for not sharing the truth about my David prior to our union. I expressed to her that my love for her endures, and I long for us to unite as a family, to create something genuine and complete once more. She simply remarked that we are living like a family, then gracefully rose and exited the room, leaving me no opportunity to reply. That moment shattered a part of my soul. I found myself as the sole one still striving. For more than a year, I held on to the hope that she would return to me in spirit. I endeavored with all my heart. Whispers of guidance, enchanting evenings, tender dialogues. Yet, alas, nothing seemed to bear fruit. I felt utterly exhausted and emotionally worn down. It became too much for me to bear. I found myself embracing that which I had long wished to avoid. Our union lay in silence, and I stood alone at its solemn farewell. And in that moment, clarity washed over me. It was time to bring our journey to a close, for the sake of my well-being, for my son's tranquility, and perhaps even for her liberation. For despite the depths of my past affection, I found myself weary of the struggle, unable to continue the battle alone. The moment I resolved to seek a divorce was a quiet one, filled with a profound sense of clarity. One morning, I awoke to the quiet stillness that followed yet another night without her return. I came to understand that I could not bear to send my David away merely to sustain a marriage that was already faltering. The young lad yearned for a sense of stability, and I realized that I could not offer him that if I continued to permit chaos to reign within my home. If she yearned for freedom so fiercely, it could be hers, yet not according to her desires. Submitting first may appear trivial to some, yet I have discovered it grants you a sense of mastery. You choose the venue for the case to unfold. You have the opportunity to arrange your finances, collect your documents, and weave your narrative with grace. I diligently explored and ensured that I filed in a jurisdiction where, should I demonstrate that her actions, her public disrespect, emotional neglect, and perhaps infidelity, contributed to the dissolution of our union, the law would duly consider those factors. And allow me to share, I possessed the evidence. For weeks, I devoted myself to the subtle art of gathering all that was essential. Images, whispers of the heart, visual narratives, moments when she returned home inebriated. There were days when she didn't return home at all. Even in those moments when she was left by another man, the scent of liquor and smoke lingering in the air. Amidst all these unfolding events, her demeanor remained unchanged. Indeed, it took a turn for the worse. It seemed as though she believed I would simply acquiesce, perhaps thinking me fragile or under the impression that my affection for her was so profound that I could never truly part ways. In truth, my heart was hers to cherish. Yet, I refused to allow that love to shatter my tranquility. I had a David who observed it all with keen eyes. I could not guide him toward manhood by allowing myself to be trampled upon. On a serene Saturday morning, as I sat in the living room perusing some documents, she entered with a James I had never encountered before. She failed to make the introduction, leaving a subtle air of mystery lingering between them. She approached me with a graceful air, retrieved a pristine white envelope from her bag, placed it delicately on the coffee table, and with a calm yet resolute voice, instructed me to sign the divorce papers and leave. I gazed upon her. Then I gazed upon the gentleman. He averted his gaze from mine. I let out a soft, melodic laugh. After all that has transpired, she truly believed she could cast me from my own abode. In that moment, my son, who had been standing quietly in the shadows, turned to her and uttered a phrase that froze time itself. "My dear mother, are you truly unaware?" She cast a delicate frown. "Do you wish to know something?" she inquired, her irritation evident. I instructed my dear boy to venture into the study and retrieve the books for me. He returned a moment later, a substantial folder cradled elegantly beneath his arm. I gently unfolded it and presented her with one of the documents. Her complexion turned pale. Little did she know that I had already taken the steps to end our union. I had no inkling that I had gathered a sufficient amount of evidence to cast doubt upon her credibility in any court's eyes. She believed she could conclude matters according to her own desires. Yet, the expression upon her visage revealed all that needed to be known. She believed that leaving the marriage would grant her the freedom to take with her all that she desired. Such matters do not unfold in that manner. The ensuing legal struggle was not brief, yet it unveiled much. At first, she resisted, believing she could still emerge victorious. Yet, with each fleeting month, the fees accumulated, and the weight of expectation grew ever heavier. And she came to understand that I was steadfast in my resolve. In the end, she graciously consented to a settlement that aligned with my wishes. Well, let us simply say she departed with far fewer treasures than she had anticipated. Despite everything that transpired, a sense of happiness eluded me. I found myself feeling quite weary of the endless pursuit, weary of shouldering the weight of the world, only to find myself the target of unwarranted blame. Worn from pondering the reasons behind her aversion to children, I find myself wishing she had been forthright from the beginning about her disinterest in having any. Perhaps I ought to have been more candid about my David when our paths first crossed. I shall embrace that fully. Yet, I shall never fathom why she seized every opportunity to dismiss him, as if he were unworthy of affection. For the moment, I shall take my leave here. If you have ever found yourself in a similar circumstance or witnessed another navigate through it, I would be delighted to hear your thoughts in the comments. Kindly share your thoughts and feelings with me. I would love to hear from you. I shall immerse myself in their pages.